Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. The man who rules the world and the angel of darkness take on a horde of demons in this inaugural John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, A Conversation with Death for 99 cents on Kindle or in paperback today. This is going to be part 2 to a video I did talking about Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz, the 15-year-old boy who was murdered by 8 gang members here in the South Bronx. And with the more information I get about this case, the more troubling it is, and the more it takes me back to my old days back in high school in the 1980s. Now, I've learned that the motive for murdering this Leandro Jr. Guzman Feliz was that these gang members believed he looked like an individual that one of the gang members' family members said raped her. Now, these gang members believed that this girl was raped because they saw her on video having a threesome with 2 different boys, and one of the boys resembled Leandro Jr. Guzman Feliz. And these gang members decided they were going to take out street justice on your Leandro Jr. Guzman Feliz instead of going to the police. Now, back when I was in high school, I used to run into a lot of guys like this who would think they were going to go out here and defend the honor of some girl that they liked or was their girlfriend. And usually, a lot of these guys were drug dealers back in the 1980s, and these guys would be sent out by the female to go out and exact revenge on whatever guy they said did something to them. Now, these guys, primarily, they were simps, and they didn't understand that they were being used as a pawn by these females back in the 1980s. And when I take a look at Leandro Jr. Guzman Feliz's death, I see the same type of behavior that these guys participated in. Now, these guys participated in this behavior because primarily they were going on emotion. And because they were emotional, this female manipulated these guys and used them as a tool to go out and exact revenge on the guys who she says assaulted her. Now, this woman was never assaulted. She was a willing participant in this threesome with these 2 guys. Unfortunately, these gang members were so caught up in their emotions that they couldn't see the big picture regarding this female. Now, a critically thinking man is going to say to himself, if this woman says she was raped or sexually assaulted, the first thing they're going to do is go to the police. And the reason why they're going to go to the police is because they want to have an objective analysis done so they can find the culprits behind this. And the police will go out here and do something called a rape kit, and the rape kit will let us know how this woman had been violated by this man, because when it comes down to crime scene evidence, the rape kit will let us know if this woman was raped or she had consensual sex with these men. And also with the rape kit, they will be able to collect DNA from the 2 individuals who she said that she was sexually assaulted with and use that as evidence that is irrefutable in a court. And that's what a man with a critical thinking skill is going to do. He's going to let law enforcement do their work and not try to call himself running out here to get street justice. Because the guy who goes out here and goes to get street justice, what's going to happen to him is what happened to these 8 gang members, in that they're going to wind up getting arrested and prosecuted for first-degree murder, because their actions show malice of forethought, and that malice of forethought is what is going to lead to these men doing 25 to life, while this female is going to be out here pursuing relationships with 2 other guys she's going to participate in a threesome with. And when it comes down to these gang members, these guys don't have critical thinking skills because, in most cases, they don't have their fathers in their life. And I talked about this in the previous video where I asked the critical question, where are the fathers? Because where there are fathers, you don't see any gangs, because fathers impose strong male authority in their families, and fathers impose strong rules on their boys so that they understand what discipline and character are, and they impose standards on their boys so they know how to conduct and behave themselves. This is what the father does in the home, and when he is in the home, he is the head of the family, and as the head of the family, he is going to make sure that his son follows the lead of the family and does not go out here thinking that he's going to be a part of a gang. Because when a father finds out his son is a part of a gang, what the father is going to do is give the son an ultimatum and tell him either he can be a part of his family or he can go be a part of that gang. And if he decides to be a part of that gang, what the father is going to do is put that son out of his home, because that father is going to say that if you're going to play my video games, eat my food, and lay in my bed in my home, then you are going to follow the rules of my home. And that's the role that the father would play on his son. Now, when it comes down to this thought who was running around having threesomes with these boys, I also asked the question, where was the father? Because when there is a father in the home with a girl, the girl is not going to be out here having threesomes with gang members or bum men, because she will be getting love and attention from her father, and she will be getting her emotional needs met by her father. And because her father is going out to meet her emotional needs, what's going to happen to this young woman is she's not going to be going out here looking for love through sexual intercourse with two bums like this woman did in this threesome that was videotaped. She's going to be at home studying for her tests, studying to get A's in classes, or talking to her girlfriends about other things that are going on at school. Because she is emotionally fulfilled, she's not going to have to go outside looking for love from other men and then having these men exploit her in a way where they're going to be out here having sex with this young girl and then videotaping it. Because when you see a young girl out here participating in these sex acts and then these guys are videotaping it, that's because that girl has low self-esteem. She doesn't love herself. She has no self-confidence. She has no self-esteem. And because she doesn't have any of these internal character traits that the father builds up, what happens is this girl is out here and then she's going out here and participating in these sex acts to look for love. She starts to feel guilty about participating in these sex acts. She realizes how whorish her behavior is. And then what happens is, because she feels guilty and ashamed about her behavior that she participated in, because she knows on the inside that it was wrong, she then tries to tell lies to other people that she was raped. And then that lie goes out, and these guys who are emotional decide to go out on it and go out here and murder an innocent young man like this Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz, who was just going to the store, as he says, to go give $5 to a friend. Now, this young man was completely innocent in this case. He was not deserving of any of the violence that was perpetrated on him, and nothing he did deserved any of this violence. All of this violence was instigated all because we had a female tell a lie that she was raped by someone when she willfully and intentionally participated in this sex act. And this sex act, again, was all due to the fact that this girl had no father in her life, and these boys were in this gang due to the fact that they had no fathers in their life. And again, I asked the critical question, where are the fathers? Because the reason why we had this tragedy in the Bronx was due to the fact that there were no fathers in the home to enact discipline on these children. There was no male to be an authority figure to these children, and there was no man there to model manhood or masculinity for these children. And because there was no man there to model manhood or masculinity, this is why we had this tragedy transpire here in the Bronx. Now, many of these mothers are now talking about how they want to get this bodega closed because the bodega employees did nothing to save Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz's life. And I believe that that's just a deflection that these women are participating in, because those store owners were probably scared for their own lives about what had transpired themselves. So how is getting this store closed going to do anything constructive for the community? That's another critical question people need to ask regarding this situation. How does closing the store do anything to change things in the community when the real thing is that these females looks like they want to deflect from taking responsibility for this situation, because the whole situation that happened in that neighborhood was due to the fact that all these children came from single mother households. There were no fathers in these homes, and there was no man to teach these children the discipline that they needed to be able to navigate the world. And no one wants to hold the females accountable, because when it comes down to most people who live in areas like the South Bronx, most people put their mothers on pedestals, and they think that their mothers can do absolutely no wrong. Now, as a resident of the South Bronx for 44 going on 45 years, I know what the problem is, and the problem in these tragedies isn't the violence, it is the single mother households that create the males and females who go out here and participate in the irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors like the gang violence and like the sexual promiscuity. And that all comes from that single mother household. But no one wants to hold the single mothers accountable. Instead, they want to talk about how we need government programs, how we need social programs, when all we really need to do is to get that father back in the home, and we need to get that father back involved in his family's life, because it's that father that's the one who will lay down the laws and standards for those children, and it's that father who's going to make efforts to prevent that violence by teaching his children discipline and being a model for manhood and an example for manhood for both his son and his daughter. But many of the women in the community, they don't want to deal with the father, because they use the father as a tool to get government benefits like welfare, Section 8, WIC, and many other government benefits. And that's where the big problem lies, because that's why I call many of these mothers hypocrites, because they're the ones out here marching and protesting to stop the violence, when what they need to do is stop participating in the irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors they participate in, and admit that they need the father in order to help raise their daughters and especially their sons, because it's the belligerent belief by many of these women that they can raise a boy on their own to become a man that has led to 3 generations of boys growing up completely dysfunctional. And because they don't get the guidance and support from a man, they go out here and become parts of gangs, or they go out here and participate in horrific acts of violence like this murder of Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz. And because many of these men are sitting here talking, marching and protesting with these women instead of pointing the finger at them and holding them accountable, this is why things have not changed in almost 40 years in the South Bronx as it relates to these incidents, because we've had these incidents ever since I was a teenage boy back in the late 80s. And the reason why we had these incidents ever since I was a teenage boy back in the late 80s is because many of these boys grew up without their fathers. They grew up not understanding a model for manhood. They didn't grow up with a model for masculinity. They never learned how to socialize like men, and they never learned the life skills they needed from the men in their communities. And because they did not learn the life skills they were supposed to learn in their communities, what happened to these boys was, because they didn't grow up without a father, they wound up thinking that the gang way was the only way, and they wound up believing that they needed to put women on pedestals, and if a woman says something, then it has to be true, and the only way they could be a man was to please a woman, and the only way to protect a woman was to go out here and participate in an act of violence. When a critically thinking man says, we have law enforcement, and it's their job to go out here and investigate a matter, not for us to go out here and participate in street justice on someone. That's what a man is going to do. He's going to let law enforcement do things, because when law enforcement comes in and objectively investigates, they will find out what really happened to these females. And when they find out what happens to these females, what happens is these men will learn the truth about the girls they're trying to protect. And that's what These guys are learning right now, and they're learning it the hard way because they're in Rikers Island right now, waiting to go to trial and probably be going to jail for the next 25 years. And it's all because of emotions. And I saw a lot of guys, this happened to them back in the 1980s when I was in 1990s when I was in high school. I saw men lose their lives and wind up in prison all because they could not control their emotions. And what's really sad about this incident with Rosandro Jr. Guzman Feliz is that I see nothing has changed in the almost 30 years ever was in high school, and nothing has changed overall regarding the way many of these boys from these single mother households behave and the way many of these girls in these single mother households behave. And because nothing has changed, what's sad is that no one sees what the real solution is. And the real solution is we have to hold these mothers accountable because they are the ones who are raising their sons to become these thugs that terrorize their community. And the reason why they're becoming the thugs that terrorize their community is because there is no father there in that community to be the man who will teach them how to be the leaders of that community and the way to constructively protect their community and support their community the way men in other communities like the Asian community and the white community are, because those men have fathers in the community who model manhood for them and establish a standard for manhood. So those men understand how to behave, but when it comes down to many of these black and Hispanic people who live in the Bronx, they don't have that father because the welfare state enables that family to go on with the support of the government, but without the guidance and support of men. These families desperately need the guidance and support of men, and they need men to be in the role of a father if we hope to prevent more tragedies. Unfortunately, many women are too busy getting the benefits of the government without getting the leadership and the guidance of men like fathers. And until men start looking at women and holding them accountable for these situations, instead of avoiding the pink elephant in the room like Big BK the Great said on Facebook, we're still going to have more and more of these tragedies transpire and have more summers of the savage coming up year after year. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my men's issues books like Stop Simping, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.